Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 9 Part 23 based on novel. So let's start. You leaving tomorrow? Ji Mingqi's pretty face was clearly extremely stunned after hearing Lin Dong utter such words. Her eyebrows were knitted slightly, as she looked at the young man in front of her and said, "That nefarious bone old man will attack you once you leave Martial Gathering Island." Although Lin Dong's victory over Shintu-ju previously had already allowed others to understand his strength, the nefarious bone old man was clearly not someone whom a younger generation member like Shintu-ju could compare with. Continuing to remain here is also not a solution. I will think of a way to deal with that nefarious bone old man. Lin Dong smiled and replied. After the discussion with the Ancestor Stone, his fear towards the nefarious bone old man had diminished somewhat. Moreover, he also clearly understood that he would not be able to avoid this problem known as the nefarious bone old man, if he wished to successfully leave Martial Gathering Island. Ji Mingqi's umber black brows were tightly bunched together while her pupils firmly stared at Lin Dong. She was really unable to understand where Lin Dong's confidence came from. He actually felt that he was able to deal with a seasoned expert like the nefarious bone old man, who was quite well known within the Heavenly Wind Sea region. Lin Dong smiled as he met Ji Mingqi's gaze. This continued for a moment, before the latter helplessly turned her gaze away and said, "Since you have already made up your mind, it will not do for me to force you. However, if the situation develops beyond your control, you are always welcome to return to Martial Gathering Island anytime you wish. Our Ji clan will definitely protect you." "Many thanks," Lin Dong sincerely replied. Although the Ji clan and him were merely cooperating to further their own ends in the beginning, this protection afforded by the latter had made a good impression on him. Additionally, if you wish to obtain the sea maps of unknown sea regions, you can perhaps go and visit the Sky Merchant region. It is the most flourishing region in the vicinity, and an extremely large Sky Merchant auction occurs every half a year. You should be able to gain something in that place. Ji Mingqi said. Sky Merchant region? Sky Merchant auction? Lin Dong was startled. Immediately, joy surged in his eyes. The most important thing for him to do now was to search for those unknown sea region maps. Such sea maps could only be found at a large-scale auction like this. There is still around a month until the next Sky Merchant auction. I've helped you mark out the path on the Chaotic Demon CC map. Ji Mingqi said in an attentive manner. Thank you. Lin Dong thanked her once again. His expression was filled with gratitude. It is also an investment for me. I feel that you will sooner or later become a renowned expert in this Chaotic Demon Sea. The reason I am giving you all these benefits now is because I wish to establish some early connections with you. Ji Mingqi smiled sweetly and replied. Lin Dong grinned and nodded heavily. He said, Miss Mingqi, please be reassured that as long as it is within my ability, I will definitely do my best to help you. Ji Mingqi laughed softly. Soon after, she lifted her head. Her pretty eyes observed that young face with distinct features and softly said, Take care. Yes. Lin Dong smiled and nodded. He turned his head towards another direction on Martial Gathering Island, as a chilling light steadily surfaced in his eyes. Old ghost, since you wish to take my life, let's see if you have the qualifications to do so. Just as the sunlight tore through the clouds the next morning, a light figure rushed out from the Ji clan. After which, it raised its speed to the limit, and flew out of the island. At a certain area in the Ji clan, Ji Shou lifted his head and watched the swiftly disappearing figure. He fondled his beard, and sighed after a long while, as he muttered, Little friend Lin Dong, you are really too reckless. He has always been very cautious. It is likely that he has his own considerations for him to act in this manner. Ji Mingqi softly remarked from behind. That nefarious bone old man is an expert at the half a step to the profound death stage, regardless of what kind of tricks Lin Dong has. Don't tell me that he can really fight with the latter. Ji Shou shook his head and replied. Ji Mingqi became silent. She only lifted her head a moment later and muttered to herself, such a thing, who knows? Is he finally unable to endure any longer? The nefarious bone old man, who was chatting with an elder of the Wei clan in the courtyard of the Wei manor, suddenly raised his head the moment Lin Dong moved. His eyes looked in the direction that Lin Dong had fled towards, as a dark and cold smile surfaced on his elderly face. "Master, has that brat fled?" Behind the nefarious bone old man, Chen Luo's mouth parted into a smile as he asked. "Yes." The nefarious bone old man nodded. He stood up with the bone walking stick in his hand and said, "You will remain here. I will go and finish off that brat first." "Ha ha, in that case, we will be waiting for your good news here." That elder from the Wei clan smiled faintly. Lin Dong had caused their Wei clan to lose a great amount of face during the martial gathering. He was naturally extremely willing to enjoy the show now that Lin Dong was in trouble. He is but someone from the younger generation. The nefarious bone old man casually remarked. Without further ado, he waved his sleeve, and his body turned into a grey light that charged to the sky. After which, it hurried in the direction Lin Dong had fled towards with shocking speed. Chen Luo and Wei Zhen watched the figure of the nefarious bone old man, and could not help but smile at each other. A gloating expression filled their smiles. If Lin Dong really planned to continue hiding within this martial gathering island, things would likely become a little troublesome. This move of Lin Dong to leave was undoubtedly suicidal in their eyes. Swoosh! A light figure hurried over the vast and endless sea at a shocking speed. This speed not only tore the air apart, but also left behind a deep water scar on the surface of the sea. This light figure was naturally Lin Dong, who had come from Martial Gathering Island. At this moment, he had already summoned the green dragon wings on his back. Clearly, he had raised his speed to the limit. A salty wind blew at Lin Dong, causing his clothes to flutter. He lifted his eyes and looked at the seemingly endless ocean. Finally, he inhaled a deep breath and asked in his mind, "Is everything prepared?" "Yes." The ancestor stone spirit replied in a faint voice. However, there was excitement in his voice. "Ancestor Stone, do you have a name?" Lin Dong suddenly asked. "Name?" The ancestor stone spirit was clearly startled by this sudden question of Lin Dong. It was a long while later before he replied, "My previous owner calls me Yang. Yang," Lin Dong muttered softly. He immediately nodded, as his eyes glanced at the distant rear. A heroic feeling suddenly surged within his heart. So what if you are at the half-step to profound death stage? As long as this old ghost dared to chase him today, he would definitely make this old ghost to pay the price. There is an uninhabited island in northwest of us. Let's head there. We are already very far from Martial Gathering Island. Yang once again reminded. Additionally, that nefarious bone old man has also given chase. He should catch up to you in another hour. Noted. Lin Dong nodded, as the green dragon wings on his back suddenly flapped. Immediately, a dragon roar was emitted from within his body. Green light surged over his body, as he directly turned into a green ray of light that shot across the sky and rushed in the northwest direction at a shocking speed. This flight continued for another 10 minutes, before an island appeared before Lin Dong's eyes on the distant sea surface. However, this island did not have any human figures. Clearly, it was an uninhabited island. Lin Dong's gaze scanned this small island. Immediately, his body landed on a mountain top on this small island. After which, he sat down and inhaled deeply. However, traces of excitement surged in his eyes. He flipped his hand, and the burning sky cauldron appeared within it. Bright red light surged, appearing just like a rising flame. Nefarious bone old ghost, even the 3 great sect chiefs of the Yuan Gate have failed to take my life. What right do you, as a half-step to profound death stage expert, have to do so? Since you wish to fight, I shall fight with you until the end. Lin Dong lifted his gaze. He looked at the distant sky, as a ferocious expression surged within his pupils. This wait continued for over 10 minutes. Soon after, a rushing wind sound appeared in the distance, and Lin Dong abruptly lifted his head. A grey light had appeared within his sight. Finally, this light tore through the air, and appeared in the sky above the small island. The light disappeared, revealing an old man with a white bone walking stick in his hand. It was the nefarious Bone Old Man. The nefarious Bone Old Man stood in the air. His face revealed a mocking expression as he looked at Lindong below. After which, his eyes swept around, and he spoke indifferently, "You have chosen a good burial site." Lindong once again inhaled a deep breath of the salty air. The scarlet red intensified, as he parted his mouth and laughed, "Nefarious Bone Old Ghost, I've chosen this place for you." The burning sky cauldron in Lindong's hand suddenly swelled after his voice sounded. It turned into a large cauldron that was thousands of feet in size. The cauldron hovered in the sky, as wave after wave of shocking fluctuations swept apart. The enormous bright red giant cauldron floated in the air. Red light flickered on the cauldron, appearing like waves of hot flames that caused the surrounding air to become a little distorted. Pure Yuan treasure. The eyes of the nefarious Bone Old Man glanced indifferently at the burning sky cauldron floating in the air, before he laughed coldly. "I was wondering why you dared to leave Marshall Gathering Island. So you plan on relying on this pure Yuan treasure to protect yourself. However, you are too naive if you believe that you can stop me by relying on such a thing. We will know whether or not I am naive when we fight." Lindong also replied with a cold smile. "A brat who does not know his limits. Do you really think that you have the qualifications to act arrogantly in front of this old man, just because you have defeated Shintu Ju? All right then, I shall give you a beating on behalf of your elders today. Before you possess sufficient strength, it is best that you obediently keep a low profile in this chaotic demon sea. With this arrogance of yours, you will sooner or later fail to even know why you have ended up dead." A chilling glint flashed across the nefarious Bone Old Man's eyes as he spoke in a malicious voice. "Beat me? I'm afraid that you aren't qualified, you old thing." Lindong grinned and laughed. "Sharp-tongued little bastard. You are seeking death." Fury surged within the nefarious Bone Old Man's eyes, as a murderous desire flashed across his face. Immediately, he took a step forward, as an exceptionally majestic Yuan power fluctuation surged out. Under such a fluctuation, 1,000-feet-high waves formed on the surface of the sea below. His aura was rather dreadful. Bang! However, Lindong did not show the slightest fear upon seeing this. Instead, he took the lead in attacking. His hand seal changed, and bright light surged from the burning sky cauldron. The mouth of the cauldron shook, and an enormous fiery red light pillar directly enveloped the nefarious Bone Old Man. A suction force emerged, and attempted to absorb the latter into the cauldron. "It won't be that easy to suck me in," the nefarious Bone Old Man mocked after feeling the suction force. Although he did not fear any of Lindong's techniques, he was after all a crafty old man. He clearly understood that there would definitely be some trouble if he was sucked into the burning sky cauldron, trouble which he did not wish to unnecessarily create. Immediately, he waved his sleeve. Majestic Yuan power rippled around his body like the sea, and completely blocked the suction force from the burning sky cauldron. Lindong's expression did not change when he saw this. A thought passed through his mind, as a water pillar suddenly erupted from the surface of the sea below. At the same time, a black shadow emerged in a ghost-like fashion, and rushed straight towards the nefarious Bone Old Man. "Oh? A puppet? You actually dare to take out such a disgraceful and weak puppet?" This unexpected turn of events caused the nefarious Bone Old Man to be momentarily startled. Disdain quickly surfaced from the corners of his mouth after he clearly saw what the black figure was. This black figure was naturally the final demon puppet in Lindong's hands. However, its strength had only barely reached the profound life stage. Such strength clearly did not pose any threat to the nefarious Bone Old Man. However, this was not what he required from the puppet. Explode! The black figure charged towards the nefarious Bone Old Man at lightning speed. A thought passed through Lindong's mind as the former approached the latter, and an extremely wild and violent fluctuation suddenly erupted from the demon corpse's body. After which, its body exploded. Boom! A wild and violent ripple swept outwards. Such a ferocious and uncontrolled attack forced the nefarious Bone Old Man to take a step back. The yuan power which blocked the burning sky cauldron's suction force was also disturbed for a moment because of this. Swoosh! Lin Dong's eyes flashed. He very accurately grabbed this slight opening, as the burning sky cauldron abruptly rushed out. The mouth of the bright red cauldron widened. It appeared just like a huge beast that directly swallowed the nefarious bone old man. Bang bang bang. The body of the cauldron shook wildly after the burning sky cauldron swallowed the nefarious bone old man. It was likely that the old fellow had begun to destroy its interior. A thought passed through Lin Dong's mind, and his body immediately charged into the burning sky cauldron. Sure enough, he saw the gloomy-looking nefarious bone old man on the bright red land. Brat, you are actually willing to self-destruct that puppet of yours. The nefarious bone old man stared at Lin Dong in a dark and sinister manner, as he slowly remarked. If I do not sacrifice something, I will not be able to accomplish anything. To finish off a half-step to profound death stage expert, the sacrifice of a single puppet is more than worthwhile. Lin Dong laughed. Shameless and boastful words. Do you think that you can trap me by just sucking me into this pure yuan treasure? The eyes of the nefarious bone old man turned cold. Immediately, he took a step forward. A couple of after images flashed across the sky, and his body appeared in front of Lin Dong in a ghost-like fashion. Subsequently, a palm wind containing terrifying yuan power furiously swatted down towards Lin Dong. Swoosh! The space around Lin Dong distorted. Majestic bright red light shot out and weaved itself into a light shield in front of him. Although the light shield was still shattered by the nefarious bone old man, Lin Dong had already fled a great distance using that short instant. Lin Dong was well protected by the burning sky cauldron when he was within it. This was the only way he was able to contend against the nefarious bone old man, in order to buy the time and opportunity for his final technique. The nefarious bone old man's arm jerked after he missed, as the white bone walking stick in his hand turned into a sinisterly cold white light. It seemed to penetrate space as it shot towards Lin Dong's head at an indescribable speed. Lin Dong's figure hastily retreated backwards. He clenched his hand, and the black tree branch appeared in a flash. After which, yuan power was poured into it. With a wave of his hand, it turned into a flash of black light that rushed out. Finally, it violently collided with the white light. Clang! A metallic-like sound spread in the sky, and the black light was directly sent flying backwards. The black tree trunk spun as it powerlessly fell. However, the white bone walking stick also had its trajectory changed. It ruthlessly shot into the ground, creating a 1,000-feet-long gully. Slippery brat! The nefarious bone old man's eyes vaguely contained a gloominess. Lin Dong was quite cunning, and ultimately refused to directly exchange blows with him. He was likely clearly aware of the gap between the two. Hence, he wisely chose to avoid taking the attack head-on. However, can your speed compare to this old man? The nefarious bone old man's face was dark and cold. Suddenly, strands of greyish vapor rose from within his body. The greyish energy wrapped around him, and his body vaguely became a little illusory. Lin Dong gazed at this change in the nefarious bone old man, as a feeling of danger involuntarily flashed within his heart. He did have any time to think, as his body rapidly pulled back once again. Swoosh! Just as Lin Dong moved, the nefarious bone old man stepped forward, and the greyish vapor surged. He appeared to penetrate through space, and appeared in front of Lin Dong in an extremely mysterious manner. Immediately, a savage smile flashed over his elderly face, as his 5 fingers curled. Strands of extremely faint black chi swirled around his fingertips. After which, it pierced through the void like a ghost claw, and grabbed at Lin Dong. Bang bang bang. Some cracks actually began to form after the nefarious bone old man grabbed with his hand. From this, it was possible to see just how frightening the old man's power was. Green Dragon Heavenly Seat Seal. Lin Dong's expression had turned completely solemn at this moment. He did not hesitate at all in the face of the nefarious bone old man's attack. Green light surged around him, as 10 dragon tattoos simultaneously rose from the surface of his body. Finally, it transformed into a huge dragon fist that punched forward. Bang! A frightening energy ripple wildly unfurled the sky when the two forces collided. The dragon seal formed from 10 green dragon-like tattoos instantly collapsed, as Lindong's body flew backwards. Finally, it landed on the ground in a somewhat miserable fashion, as a muffled moan was emitted from his throat. It seemed that he had been quite badly shaken. "You are actually able to block a claw from me? Brat, you can be proud even if you die today." Shock immediately flashed across the nefarious bone old man's face, after seeing that Lindong had received his claw attack head-on. His strength surpassed Lindong's by many levels. Forget about someone at the initial profound life stage, even an expert at the advanced profound life stage would definitely be seriously injured or even killed by that claw. This brat must be killed. The murderous desire in the nefarious bone old man's eyes suddenly intensified. This Lindong was merely at the initial profound life stage, yet he was already able to reach such a level. Would this not mean that he would not be able to deal with Lindong if the latter was to advance to the advanced profound life stage or the perfect profound life stage? Such a potential threat must not be allowed to live. The nefarious bone old man ceased hesitating after this thought flashed in his mind. His body tore through the sky like an eagle, before he once again dived towards Lindong. "Old bastard, I will let you taste the might of my burning sky cauldron today." Burning sky chains. Lindong lifted his head. He gazed at the nefarious bone old man, who was charging towards him once again, as a similarly ferocious expression also rose on his face. Immediately, he bent his body, and both of his hands heavily slammed onto the ground. Rumble. The land suddenly trembled intensely after his palms landed. After which, the land collapsed, and hundreds of bright red light pillars broke out from within. They turned into numerous large bright red chains that rapidly entwined around the incoming grey light figure. Hundreds of scarlet red chains pierced through the sky like a fire dragon's. After which, they twisted around the grey light that seemingly covered the sky as it arrived. This unexpected turn of events clearly caused the nefarious bone old man to be momentarily startled. However, he quickly let out a cold snort. Both of his hands were curled into a claw shape, as they violently tore downwards. 10 dark black lights swept forth, and directly cut those scarlet red chains that were surrounding him into pieces. Bang bang. Lindong's eyes were ice cold. Both of his hands were in contact with the ground, as wave after wave of powerful yuan power continuously surged into the ground. Immediately, the land continued to crack apart. Countless scarlet red chains continued to break out of the ground, and endlessly attacked the nefarious bone old man. In the face of Lindong's attacks, the nefarious bone old man stood in the air, as sharp claw winds filled the air. Not a single chain was able to approach his body. "You plan on trapping me with just this? You must be dreaming." The nefarious bone old man mockingly looked at Lindong below and sneered. Lindong completely ignored his ridicule. A thought passed through his mind, and another dozen scarlet red chains broke out from the ground. They curled around the nefarious bone old man at lightning speed. Useless actions. The nefarious bone old man swung his claw-shaped hand, and sharp winds once again sliced the dozen chains. However, a cold smile rose from the corners of Lindong's mouth the moment the chains were cut. Kai? A dozen smaller chains rushed out in a strange fashion from where the chains had been cut. After which, they snaked through the air like vipers, and curled around the nefarious bone old man's body and limbs. Break. The eyes of the nefarious bone old man turned cold as the chains wrapped around his body. Majestic yuan power suddenly exploded from within his body in an attempt to break these chains. Crack crack crack. However, the nefarious bone old man did not manage to easily break them like he had managed to did earlier. While his yuan power surged, black light also surged on those black chains. Although the chains were pushed at until they creaked, they stubbornly bound the nefarious bone old man's body this time around. What? Unable to escape, the nefarious bone old man's expression finally changed somewhat for the first time. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He was really unable to imagine that he would actually be unable to break free from these seemingly tiny black metal chains despite his strength. Old bastard, it seems that you were ultimately still a little too careless. Lin Dong raised his head and looked at the nefarious bone old man who had been bound by the black chains. Devouring power was hidden within these chains, hence, they could not be compared to those scarlet-red chains from earlier. Even though this nefarious bone old man was powerful, he would still require a great deal of effort to escape. Brat, it is too early for you to be happy. Even though I am unable to move, it is still extremely easy for me to kill you. The nefarious bone old man stared at Lin Dong with sinisterly cold eyes. Immediately, his foot suddenly stomped on the empty air. 1,000 feet large yuan power pillar shot out and viciously blasted at Lin Dong. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Scarlet-red chains danced in the sky and turned into a giant web above Lin Dong. At the same time, it also received that yuan power pillar. Old bastard, if you're done playing, you should come and try the feast that I have prepared for you. Scarlet-red chains broke apart and descended from the sky. Lin Dong lifted his head and stared at the nefarious bone old man. The smile on the corners of his mouth was somewhat ferocious. What arrogant words! The nefarious bone old man's pupils shrunk slightly as he stared intently at Lin Dong. That tone of his was eerie, but for some unknown reason, unease suddenly rose from deep within his heart. All of Lin Dong's actions today seemed to have been planned in advance. Lin Dong grinned and did not speak any further. It was not easy for him to trap this old fellow, and this was the only opportunity he had to unleash his great killing move. Who? A cluster of white vapor was spat out from Lin Dong's mouth. Quickly after, he clenched his hand. An ancient scarlet-red flame-like tablet appeared in his hand. It was the ancient divine flame tablet. Lin Dong's eyes were searing hot as he stared at the ancient tablet in his hands. A thought passed through his mind, and the tablet slowly rose. While it rose, strands of scarlet-red flames started to burn from within it. The surrounding space began to become distorted as this flame burned, as a frightening temperature was quietly emitted, causing the yuan power in the area to boil a little. This? The nefarious bone old man looked at the rising ancient tablet, as his expression became ugly. The burning flame on the ancient tablet caused even him to feel some fear within his heart. Grug. Several mouthfuls of essence blood containing pure yuan power was directly spat out from Lin Dong's mouth. Finally, they landed on the ancient divine flame tablet. At the same time, the yuan power within his body also surged out and poured into it. A trace of paleness spread on Lin Dong's face, as his aura began to weaken at a shocking speed. Clearly, activating this ancient divine flame tablet had almost exhausted all of his strength. However, the scarlet-red flame on the ancient divine flame tablet also became increasingly deeper in color amidst this exhaustion of his. In the end, it actually became like the color of fresh blood. Universe incinerating flame arrow. Lin Dong's eyes were searing hot as they looked at this ancient tablet that was burning with a bloody flame. Soon after, the seal formed by his hands changed, as a low voice was emitted from his throat. Buzz buzz. After his voice sounded, the blood-red flame immediately rushed into the sky from the ancient divine flame tablet. After which, it transformed into a long blood-colored arrow. The long arrow was around 10 feet or so in length, while the flames that rose from it were just like fresh blood that continued to drip downwards. As the flames danced, an annihilation-like fluctuation quietly spread. Even the pupils of the nefarious bone old man shrunk instantly in the face of this fluctuation, as horror surged out from deep within his eyes. He was really unable to imagine that Lin Dong would actually be able to summon such a frightening attack. Lin Dong gazed at the nefarious bone old man, whose expression had changed, while the savage expression on his pale face became even more intense. Quickly after, he made the motion of pulling a bow. His eyes instantly turned ice cold in the next instant, as his finger was suddenly released. Swish! The moment Lin Dong's finger was released, the long arrow that burned with a blood-red flame emitted a deafening screech. Even space itself was forcefully shattered due to this screech. Immediately, the long arrow arrived in a flash. It seemed to have penetrated through the obstructions of space and shot directly towards the head of the nefarious bone old man. Bang! The hairs all over the nefarious bone old man's body stood up at this moment, as a horrified expression appeared on his grim old face. Monstrous yuan power wildly swept out from within his body. This time around, he had finally broken the black chains that were restraining him. Without any hesitation, his body began to hurry backwards. He had sensed the threat of death from that long blood-colored arrow. "I'm afraid it is too late for you to leave now." Lin Dong icily laughed as he looked at the nefarious bone old man, whose body was about to retreat backwards. Even with all his power, this attack could only be used once. Moreover, he would end up in a weakened state for a period of time after using it. If this nefarious bone old man managed to avoid it, Lin Dong would no longer have any strength left to fight. Hence, this arrow must not miss. Both of Lin Dong's hands rapidly formed a series of seals, as majestic mental energy wildly swept out from within his Niwen palace. A low ice-cold voice was emitted from his mouth, "Stop!" A mysterious fluctuation spread out in the sky at lightning speed. After which, that nefarious bone old man was shocked to discover that his body had frozen for an instant. This stillness was practically almost undetectable, but it genuinely existed. Normally, no one would pay any attention to such a short instant. However, such an instant was currently fatal. Swoosh! The long arrow burning with a blood-red flame pierced through the air at this moment. In the end, it mercilessly shot into the body of the nefarious bone old man under the latter's horrified gaze. Bang! Monstrous blood-colored flames unfurled the moment that it struck, while the entire space within the cauldron began to tremble crazily. This video will end here.